he puts his hand here and one on the small of my back, and I put my hand on his shoulder and my head on his chest, and I start dancing with my Father. And then he says, let's do this for a few million years, and then we'll eat some French toast. And I say, sounds good to me. And that, my friends, is the gospel of the kingdom. Now, when we start talking about God, that's a big, big topic. And there are a lot of smart people in the world who have written millions of books on God. In fact, there are people in this very room who have PhDs in God. I've got a BA in theater. Go figure. So instead of me trying to, as an actor, wrap this up in some wonderful, profound way tonight to send you home with great theological truth, I'm simply going to punt tonight. I've got a friend of mine who is sort of a resident God expert in the area of North Georgia where we live. And I think I'll just let him wrap us up tonight to tell us one more story about the true nature of God. Hey, my name is Bubba Johnson of Bubba's Tire and Auto out there in the Buford Highway. The other day, me and some of the boys, we sitting around there at lunch, having some meatloaf sandwiches that the wife made us. And we got into one of them theological discussions. One of the boys, he looks over at me, says, Bubba, what you think God likes best, dogs or cats? I said, dogs. Of course, there's no disagreement amongst the boys on that one, And then after a while, another one of the boys looks over at me and says, so, Bubba, what kind of dogs you think God likes best, purebreds or mutts? I said, mutts. He says, how come is that? I said, because that's just the way God is. That's just the nature of God. God's preference in dogs is the same as God's preference in people. That's just the nature of God. Well, some of the boys was kind of looking at me funny after I said that, kind of like some of y'all are doing here now. And so I thought maybe I might ought to explain that to them. So I explained it to them by reminding them about this old boy. We got this old boy coming to shop every once in a while for an oil change. Old boy's name is Raymond Boley. Raymond, he's a chicken rancher. He's got him about 5 houses up there toward the mountains, Probably, I don't know, maybe 100,000 birds and all. And Raymond, he drives himself a Chevy long bed pickup truck. Now, I'll tell you something about that truck. That thing is spotless. I mean, you could eat eggs off the hood of that truck if you so. I mean, you could grill your chickens right there on the engine block if you wanted to. I mean, that thing is spotless. But I tell you something weird about Raymond and that truck. Whenever you see Raymond, he's got this old dog that's riding right up there in the cab of that truck. Now, the dog's name is Partner, and Partner Partner is of questionable lineage. Whenever you see Raymond, there too is Partner, and that dog is drooling and shedding all over the upholstery of that truck. Well, I got real curious about that one day. How picky Raymond is about that truck. So Raymond, he come in for an oil change. We're sitting there having RC Cola and a moon pie. And I said to Raymond, Raymond, I'm going to ask you something I've been wondering about for a long, long time. I said, Raymond, how come you let that old mutt ride up there in the cab of your truck? You ought to make that old mutt ride in the back of your truck, Raymond. That old mutt's going to ruin your upholstery. Sure enough, about that time, I look at their Partner's drooling all over the steering wheel. And Raymond, he says to me, Bubba, you don't know about Partner, do you? I said, no, I do not. Won't you tell me? So Raymond, he goes on to tell me this story about Partner, which I will relate to y'all now. Raymond, he says to me, yeah, Bubba, he says, a while back, we was having bad trouble with a chicken. He said, I'd go out there some morning, it'd be like 10 birds worth of feathers lying around outside them chicken houses. He said, now we're going to lose 5 or 10 birds a night due to natural causes. But he said, them birds are dying inside the houses and these chicken feathers are outside the house. He said, I figure there must be some sort of critter getting in there, you know, kind of having a buffet line with some of them weaker birds. And he says to me, he says, Raymond, he says, I wasn't all that worried about it. He says, I just figured we'd just clean up them feathers. But he says, my wife, Earlene got real nervous about something getting in there with them chickens. So Raymond, he tells me that Earlene decides that they're going to have to get him a watchdog. So he says, Earlene, she goes down there to the mall, you know, and goes in one of them fancy pet stores there in the mall, you know. And he says she picks out for a watchdog, he says she picks out, Bubba, for a watchdog, a full-grown, purebred, white poodle for a watchdog. I said, a poodle, Raymond? He says, yeah, poodle. Earlene says, as long as we're going to have a watchdog, might as well be a cute one that don't shed. Well, some time goes on. There's still chicken feathers out there. One night, there's this loud commotion out there, and Raymond, he's about had it. So he got himself a 12-gauge shotgun, and that thing is loaded with buckshot. And he says to me, he says, Bubba, it's the middle of the night, it's pitch black. He said, I grabbed that shotgun, I commenced to running out there toward them chickens. He said, I didn't turn on no lights or nothing. I didn't want to scare off whatever it was that was out there. But he said, I got there, and the chickens, they was real restless. And he said, and then I heard one chicken is squawking to beat the band. And he said, I ran in the corner there, and here comes some critter. He said, I couldn't even make out what it was because it's pitch black, but I knew it was a critter with a chicken in his mouth because that chicken was squawking to beat the band. He said, I lowered that 12-gauge and blam, blasted away. He said, I heard this loud yelp, and whatever it was done run off in the dark. I said, Raymond, where was the poodle all this time? Raymond said, never left the couch. He sat there on them doilies, staying clean and not shedding. Well, Raymond decided, he tells me, that it's time to get himself a real watchdog. So about 3-4 days later, when Raymond has the time, he goes down there to pound, right? And he figured he gonna get him a pound dog, watch him chicken. So he says to me, he says, Bubba, he says, I walk in there to pound. He says, the first dog that I laid eyes on in that pound was this old mutt. He's just lying down there on the cement. It's pitiful. Didn't lift up his head, his eyes, or nothing. Just lay there looking pitiful. He said, I studied that mutt for a long time. And then he kind of walked around, you know, looked at some of them other dogs in the pound. But he says, for some reason or another, Bubba, I just kept coming back to that mutt there. I couldn't figure out what it was. And by, Raymond, he's standing there staring at the mutt. The pound fella, you know, he's standing right there next to Raymond. And Raymond, he says to the pound man, he says, well, I think I want that dog right there. And the pound man, he says, whoo, no, you don't, man. You don't want that old dog. I'm telling you, you don't want that old dog. Raymond says, yeah, I do. That's the dog I want right there. I'm telling you, mister, that's going to be, the pound man says, you don't want that old dog, mister. Now, we're holding that old dog for 4 more days because that's the state law, but they were going to gas that worthless piece of dog flesh. Raymond says, I am telling you, buddy, I want that. The pound man says, no, you don't want that dog, buddy. That old mutt's all full of buckshot. Raymond said it's kind of like a light bulb done gone on in his head. He looked down there at that old mutt. About that time, that mutt shifted his eyes, looks up at Raymond. And Raymond, he kind of squats there beside that dog. You know, he kind of strokes that dog's side. It's all full of buckshot. He pulls that dog's mouth open, you know. A whole bunch of chicken feathers stuck in that dog's mouth. And Raymond, he says to the pound man, you should have heard Raymond, too. When he's telling me about this, he's kind of tearing up, you know, which is something to behold. Raymond, he don't tear up about much of nothing, you know, so maybe like a busted transmission or something. Raymond, he's stroking that dog there, and he says to the pound man, he says, I'm going to tell you something, buddy. That right there is going to be my dog. I'm choosing that one. Yes, sir. That there's my dog. Raymond Bowley paid big bucks to hock that old mutt out of that pound. And then he paid bigger bucks to take that dog to the vet, get it all patched up. And then he took that dog home with him and fed him a little dry dog food with a little chicken broth over the top of it. He fed that mutt, he forgave that mutt, and he named that old mutt Partner. And Partner has been a law friend and watchdog ever since. So, Bubba's Bible Made Easy on the nature of God. Number one, God loves mutts and loves to forgive them. So number two, it's better to admit you're a mutt than to play like you're a poodle. Because number three, only forgiving mutts get to ride shotgun in the cab of God's pickup. You know, when you see somebody in a pickup truck with a dog on the passenger side and the windows down and they're driving along, it's kind of like the guy and his date. And invariably this happens. The window is down on the passenger side, and the dog's got his head out the window, and his ears are flapping, and his jowls are flopping, and there's a steady stream of dog expectorant streaming down the side of the pickup truck. And the dog has this blissful look on his face, like it doesn't get any better than this. And everything's flopping and flapping and moving, and it's just wonderful to the dog. And I used to see those dogs with their heads out of the side of the pickup truck window, and I used to think, you stupid dog. What are you doing? Do you have any idea how stupid you look, you stupid dog? I never could figure out why dogs really did that. I knew there was some reason, but I didn't know what it was. I finally figured it out one day. I had like an epiphany, a dogany. It was after I wrote this last monologue. I figured out why dogs do that. You know why dogs do that, don't you? Why they stick their head out of the side of the pickup truck window? It is because they are saying to everyone they pass, I'm with him. And he picked me. And he drives the truck. Ain't it great? And you know what our jobs are, folks? Whether we're actors, our moms, our school teachers, our professors, our counselors, our psychologists, our factory workers, our students. You know what our job is? Our job is to simply stick our heads out of the side of God's pickup truck and drool. And the world looks at us and they say, who are those fools? And we say, we're with him and he picked us. Ain't it great? And it's a great job. Anybody can do it, even an actor. So let's go to it. Amen. I'm done.